Well, all right, here we go. Here is Stewart Best. Stewart, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me, Art. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Where are you, by the way?
We're just east of the Twin Cities, about 80 miles. We are in a small town called Wheeler, Wisconsin.
Wheeler, Wisconsin.
Right.
Okay. Boy, you've done a lot of stuff. I definitely have heard of all the Iron Mountain stuff that you've done. I've heard a lot about that. And you did all that, huh?
Oh, yes.
The Atlantis Chronicles?
Well, the Atlantis Chronicles was a research video that we did to try and find out the truth about Atlantis and what it was really all about. And it's a very interesting video. That took 4 hours. It's a 4-hour video.
4-hour video. UFOs?
That's a 7-hour video.
Gateway to Hell?
That's part of it. It's UFO's Gateway to Hell, actually, with a question mark.
Oh, boy, are we going to talk about that. But, you know, what I first want to talk about is something that we know that occurs, and a million people have sent me articles on this. We have the North Pole and the South Pole.
Mm-hmm.
And we've always known it that way. North Pole's north, South Pole south. And so it is. But it may not have been that way forever, and there is significant scientific evidence, perhaps even conclusive, that there have been prior polar shifts. In other words, where north goes south and south goes north, right?
That's right.
Now,
absolutely.
Now, how many times in our Earth's history do we think this has occurred?
Well, it depends on the experts you look at, but from what we can gather, probably 7 to 8 times. They're just, I think partially they're guessing because of records, but it has happened a considerable number of times. From a biblical perspective, there is at least probably 2. I believe there was one before the creation of Adam and Eve that you'll find in Genesis. And then it appears as though when the time of Noah's flood came, that also may have incorporated at least a partial polar shift, if not a total one. And then a very interesting event occurred in the days of Peleg, which occurred maybe 250 to 300 years after the flood, in which it says the earth was divided, and that would have been a gigantic earthquake, which, according to the ancient records, set up the nations as we know them today.
The continents? Did it actually change continental formations? I mean, all right, well, let's get down to it. What do we think occurs? Oh, God, so many questions. First of all, how quick would a polar reversal occur?
Well, the actual polar reversal, from what we can gain from the scriptures and from other documents, ancient documents, it occurs very rapidly, usually within a one-day period. So it occurs, when it finally goes, it goes extremely rapidly.
A one-day period?
Yes.
And in one day, the North Pole goes to roughly the South Pole or some new location, and South goes to North?
Yes.
Okay, if that were to occur, what is our best guess about what would happen?
Total destruction. Basically, it would depend on where you were on the Earth's surface at the time the shift occurred, the direction of the shift.
Let's say I'm in Nevada.
I would think from the prophecies you'd be in a lot of trouble.
Well, what do you mean?
I think everybody in the United States of America is going to be in a lot of trouble. Because a shift...
Define trouble.
Destruction.
You mean dead?
Death. Yes.
Well, what would kill us?
Well, let me just quote you from Isaiah, for example. Behold, the Lord maketh the earth empty, and maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof.
Okay, translate that into what that might mean scientifically.
Well, scientifically, that would mean that in a very short period of time, the North Pole becomes the South Pole, and actually probably goes beyond it.
Sure.
Because...
no, but I mean effects. When that happened, what...
Total destruction.
By what means?
By means of, well, shall we say, outside almost outer space, cold, coming down to the surface. The scriptures indicate a tremendous roll cloud develops. If you've seen major squall lines, you've seen these roll clouds.
Oh, listen, brother, I used to chase them.
All right.
I chased them looking for tornadoes, so yes, I'm extremely familiar with the roll cloud.
Okay, now multiply that roll cloud by a tremendous margin, because what happens is the surface of the Earth changes directions rapidly, but the atmosphere above it does not.
Wait a minute. The surface of the Earth changes directions.
Right. In a shift, the Earth is tilted at approximately 22.5, 23.5 degrees.
Right.
All right. Now, when a shift occurs,
right,
that tilt, the Earth, the North Pole, starts to slide to the south. Now, as it slides to the south, it is fairly solid, so the crustal part of the Earth just simply slides. But the Earth, or the atmosphere, does not catch up with it. It doesn't just move with it.
Oh, my God. You know, I once had somebody on here talking about polar shift, and he said there would be 800-mile-per-hour winds.
Oh, I would think probably at least that, probably even more.
And so if I just heard you correctly, you're saying the Earth's surface would move, but the atmosphere wouldn't. The net effect, though, would be atmosphere moving by us, or us actually, it wouldn't make any difference. The net effect would be stupendous winds.
Yes. Yes. In fact, the atmosphere would actually begin to roll back as the surface of the Earth accelerates in the shift. Because the atmosphere cannot keep up with it. It begins to roll back, and it creates a huge vacuum area.
For the first time, I understand this.
And then air from the outer space comes down because it's super cold, and you have instant freeze of anything that happened to be there that would...
I take it you mean actually upper atmosphere.
Yes.
The very thinner, very cold upper atmosphere.
Yes.
Anybody who's ever been in an airplane, one of the recent 747s, when you look at the outside temperature and you're only at like 40,000 feet, the outside temperature is like minus 80, minus 90 degrees typically.
Yeah, it gets pretty chilly up there.
Just that far up. So further up in the atmosphere, of course, it's if that were to suddenly come down...
Well, you have instant freeze, which probably explains the findings in Siberia and whatnot.
You mean the vegetation in the Woolly Mammoths?
Yes. Yes. Instant freeze. They were quick frozen in a split second. The only thing that would do that is super cold air approaching, because of wind chill factors.
And it would have to be very fast.
Oh, instantaneous. They would never know what hit them. Nobody would know what hit them. There will be warning signs.
Like what?
Well, we're already getting the warning signs. We're seeing changes in the weather patterns. The patterns are getting more and more violent.
Boy, I'll tell you, there's no question about that.
I think we're in the preliminary stages of a polar shift.
Now, let me tell you a little story. This is a true story. I could read it because I've got it here somewhere, but I know it by heart. The Fujita scale of tornadoes actually goes to 12, but that's just an academic study. On Earth, in our atmosphere, it is impossible to have any, the scientists say anyway, meteorologists, impossible to have anything greater than what's called an F5 tornado at 318 miles per hour. Now, that's exactly what we had, was 318 miles per hour. That is the top, the very tip top of the F5 scale. At 319, which, by the way, they think they might have actually had, you would have an F6. And they say that's impossible. And yet, it occurred. And everybody who's been watching the weather maps knows the horrendous tornado season that we've had. And you're saying this is a harbinger.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, it's going to increase tremendously.
Then there's one more thing. And I've been dealing with this on my show now for 2 years. So I'll tell you about it. You can tell me if it means anything, Stewart. But from time to time, I will suddenly start getting all these emails and faxes, and people will start saying to me, hey, Art, guess what? My compass is suddenly deviating anywhere between 8 to 15 degrees west. And it's freaky. It's like the pole is wandering a little bit, and then it comes back.
Mm-hmm. Well, a magnetic pole shift probably will precede the actual literal pole shift. When the magnetic poles shift and go into, I guess, what you could call them a dipolar reversal, there is a period of time in which the magnetic field actually collapses, according to the scientists that have studied this.
In other words, goes to zero.
Goes to zero. During that time, of course, you have all the lethal rays from the sun, et cetera, your coronal mass ejections and all that.
Nothing to protect you from them, right?
That's right, because it's the magnetic field that actually does most of the protecting, which is one of the reasons why your satellites or manned satellites are below the Van Allen belt, because they're protected by the Van Allen belt itself from the more lethal rays of the sun.
So if suddenly it went to zero, in essence, we would be immediately, particularly if it's a bad solar cycle time, which, by the way, we happen to be coming up on.
Yes.
A solar maximum, they say, perhaps within the next year, you would then be wide open to a coronal mass ejection that could flip the poles.
Yes. Well, I don't know if it would actually literally create the polar shift, but it could certainly rearrange the magnetic poles tremendously. And there are some scientists that have done some research on this, and they claim that when the poles go to zero, that it has tremendous effects upon the Earth, great shaking of the Earth, and then it reorientates itself, and the North Pole becomes the South Pole, et cetera, et cetera.
Stuart, I have a fellow I interview from time to time named Major Ed Dames from SciTech, which is a remote viewing organization. He has remote viewed something that he calls a kill shot from the sun. And it sounds an awful lot like what you're talking about.
Could well be. There's no question that the sun is involved in this, because the time of the polar shift, according to the scriptures, and the time of a solar nova are the same. The Bible indicates in the Old Testament that the moon will give off the light of the sun, and the sun will give off 7 times the light it has now. Now, that can only be described as a mini nova.
You know, it's interesting you should mention this, because I've been reading these stories just in the last few days about scientists seeing these suns go into this apparent nova condition a lot lately. I mean, they've got all kinds of new information about it, and if other suns can do it, I mean, our sun is not that unusual.
That's right.
It could do it too, couldn't it?
It not only could, according to the prophecies, it will. And actually, the way the Lord worded it, he said the heavens will be shaken, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. In other words, things sort of go off from their normal course. The book of Enoch says the moon shall change its laws and not be seen for its proper period.
Would anybody on Earth live through such an event?
Yes, there are survivors. According to the scriptures, there are survivors.
Well,
not many.
How about scientifically? I don't in any way put down the scriptures, and I realize you're coming at this from a Christian perspective, which is fine. But scientifically, if what you suggest occurred, how would anybody live?
I think, again, it would depend on your location upon the planet in relationship to the spin of the polar shift itself. In other words, if you were in an area where you were sort of in the pivot area, probably not a whole lot would happen to you. But those on the outside of the shift, you see, would have tremendous damage.
Oh, I absolutely do see. In other words, inside you would hardly feel the motion. Outside, you'd be thrown from here to Kalamazoo.
Yes.
Before you dismiss what Stewart Best is saying about a polar shift, you better listen closely. From the Seattle Times, Friday, July 25th, 1997, in case you want to check, dramatic land shift may explain rapid change in creatures. This was by Robert Cook in Newsday. 500 million years ago, continents shifted 90, I repeat, 90 degrees, migrating rapidly from polar regions to the tropics and vice versa, in a global upheaval that may help explain the sudden increase in the diversity of creatures on the planet. The new theory is the first to tie together the strange series of global events that occurred during the mysterious time period known as the Cambrian Explosion. During that period, apparently all kinds of creatures went away and all kinds of creatures appeared on the face of the Earth. This surprising new data was published today, meaning back then, by two scientists and colleagues at the California Institute of Technology. So before you dismiss anything, you better consider that. I don't know where Mindspring went. That's what was supposed to be there. Computers. Computers. All right, back to Stewart Best. Stewart, welcome.
Well, thank you.
What I just read you would seem to suggest not only the physical change that you talked about, but apparently a change in the creatures of the Earth. Many gone, many new ones, many evolved. Survivors, to be sure, but a whole different place.
Well, of course, if you had a massive rearrangement of the Earth's surface, it would cause tremendous shifting of everything. Animal life, bird life, plant life, and of course, as you know, in a major shift like that, your climates totally change. You go from like polar Arctic conditions to tropical conditions, and there is no question we have enough records, I think, to substantiate and prove
right
that polar shifts have occurred in the past.
Then obviously it could occur again, and people are listening very carefully. So again, if you would, roll over what the signs would be that we're approaching one. You said rapid weather change for sure.
Well, you get rapid weather changes. There should be fluctuations in the magnetic poles. There should be changes in the migratory habits of birds, animals, because your magnetic pole is shifting.
You know, it's strange you should mention that, because there have been all these recent stories about, you know what homing pigeons are, right?
Yes.
Well, they released in several locations thousands of homing pigeons, and you know what? They didn't go home. They didn't go home.
They did
thousands and thousands of them, Stewart. We've been getting migratory reports that are just absolutely what I call head scratchers. You know, birds that ought to be flying south are flying north. Really weird stuff like that going on. And you're saying that's one of the signs?
Yes. In fact, we noticed it flying when I was professionally flying. Back in the 60s, for example, you could get on top of most squall lines at around 35,000 feet.
Yes, sir.
But as we approached the 80s, they really got up there.
Who did you fly for, and in what kind of planes?
Well, we were flying the Gulfstreams, the Falcon jets, the Lockheed Jetstars, that sort of thing. So we were getting up there quite a ways in the atmosphere. But we noticed a change in the violence of storms. And the tops were, it's not uncommon now for the tops to be 50, 60,000.
As a matter of fact, the Oklahoma storms the other day were well over 60,000 feet.
Yes, that does not surprise me at all. We noticed that change, and that's just one more of the changes. Then you would have greater earthquakes that will come in various places on the Earth.
Again, strange you should mention that. A mammoth right now is going through the most incredible swarm I have ever seen. We've even had a 5.0. There was an earthquake the other day in Kansas City. As a matter of fact, I got about 8 earthquake reports tonight. Earthquakes going on all over the place in odd places where you wouldn't expect. Kansas City, for heaven's sakes.
Well, I think you're going to see earthquakes in places where they have not been before. We issued a warning to the people out there around the Mammoth Lakes area, Oregon, into California, down through San Diego.
Yes.
That they should consider possibly even moving. That area is definitely going to go under the water.
Under the now, what area was that again, please? Oregon?
Well, it's going to go inland from Oregon down through a good share, I believe, of California. And if you follow any of the visionaries of Earth changes,
I follow them all.
Well, you know how their maps lie. I mean, it goes inland quite a ways. And
I have about a 6-foot map. The most incredible thing you've ever seen from Gordon Michael Scallion.
Yes, we have that.
Who's a very good friend of mine, the Earth Changes map. And frankly, Stewart, I'm not here.
Well, you would have seacoast property for a little while, and then you'd probably be under the water. Because if you follow what these people are saying, and you go into the geological data,
yes,
all of the lines, all of your fracture zones are exactly where they say all the major activity is going to occur.
Huh.
And California is in serious trouble. And if you follow down through from the Great Salt Lake, and it kind of curves down around towards San Diego, that whole area, Mammoth Lakes, I think, is a very dangerous place.
Something is getting ready to happen at Mammoth. And if not now, then in the next cycle. But this cycle is amazing. What's going on right now at Mammoth is incredible. If anybody doubts that, go up to my website. We've got a link to this earthquake map, and look at Mammoth. It's like they put little pinpoints where the earthquakes are, and there have been hundreds and hundreds of earthquakes in the last few days. It's really weird.
Well, not only are you having micro quakes there, you're having some major quakes.
Yeah, above 5, actually.
Yes.
Above 5. And I guess what could occur there, I am told, is literally the birth of a new volcano eventually. Is that?
Oh, absolutely. If you are you familiar with Phoenix Rising, Mary Summer Rain?
I certainly know the name Mary Summer Rain, yes.
Well, anyway, she wrote a book called Phoenix Rising, and in that book she talks about this Indian prophetess named No Eyes, whose prophecies are very stunningly accurate. And she made mention of the fact that volcanoes are going to rise again where they've been basically dormant, and that new ones are going to be popping up all over the place.
Well, let me tell you something I did, Stewart. I don't know. Maybe you've heard the shows. Maybe you've heard people talk about the show. I don't know. But I did something that I don't think anybody else has really done on radio. I had a Hopi elder on, a very serious Hopi elder. He didn't speak English, and we had to have a translator, and it was kind of ponderous to do on talk radio. But he said that he wanted to come on the air, Stewart, because what was about to happen to Earth was just about to happen. I mean that it was so close that the normal counsel that he would keep, which would be his very own and nobody else's, had to change. He felt like he had to warn us. And he laid it out, Stewart, that essentially what you're describing is virtually, his words, upon us now.
Well, I believe that. Biblical chronologists, for example, all seem to converge in around the 1997-2010 area. And your mystics and your psychics and visionaries all say about the same time zone. A case, for example, places the polar shift, I believe, between 1999 and 2000, somewhere in there.
There's a particular unsettling reference in one of the quatrains to the 7th month, which could be interpreted to be July or September, I'm told, of this year. I'm told that by various people, all bets are off in 99. I mean, whether it's a remote viewer, whether it's somebody like Gordon Michael Scallion and other seers, people who have had visions, people who have had NDEs, near-death experiences, and been told by beings of light or whatever, you hear all kinds of things. The thing that worries you, if you're listening carefully, is that they're all saying roughly the same thing. That's what's bothered me.
Well, everything is converging upon the same time zone, and we're beginning to see, we have this war developing now over in Yugoslavia. A lot of the Earth changes parallel the political affairs of man.
There are many, many people, Stewart, who believe that what's happening in Yugoslavia right now is the ignition of World War III.
Well, I believe it is, actually, but I think that part of it will come a little bit later. What we're doing is we're forcing an alliance between Russia, China, India, and all of the Muslim nations there.
That's actually going on right now. The Russians have had envoys in China since we bombed their embassy, one of our more brilliant recent moves. And they're getting together, and God only knows what they're talking about.
Well, what they're talking about is the destruction of the United States. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, somehow I didn't think they were comparing notes on Siberia.
Yeah, and another nation you have to watch is Turkey. Turkey right now is in the Israeli-NATO alliance.
Did you know they just gave permission to fly planes out of Turkish bases to bomb in Yugoslavia?
Well, I wouldn't doubt it, but I am a little bit suspicious because biblically, Turkey does not align itself with Israel. It is one of the enemies of Israel. So either Turkey is playing games to get military intelligence from both the Israelis and NATO and American equipment, or there is going to be a shift in political leadership there, and it will shift over to a more rabid Islamic coalition than is presently there.
So it's easy to see the correlation in what the Bible says will occur. What, Stewart, in the final days? What we call the final days?
Yeah, I think everybody calls it the Hopis call it the time of the purification.
That's right.
Or the cleansing. The Bible refers to it as a tribulation period.
Right.
And it gives specific political alliances that will come into being as time of the end approaches. The key one being a surprise attack on Damascus by Israel. It's a preemptive attack that utterly destroys Damascus.
Wouldn't surprise me. They certainly have shown a propensity in Israel for preemptively striking something they regard as a national endangerment, nuclear facilities, whatever.
Yes. And the reason they do it, I'm sure, is for exactly the reason you just gave. They preempt because of Russian-Syrian ties, which are now closely developing, rearming of Iraq, the rearming of Iran, and that's another dangerous area. And it would not surprise me if the United States gets involved in a, shall we say, a three-pronged war. North Korea is heating up. We've been, of course, bombing Iraq regularly. It's just not in the news. But according to the biblical prophecies, the United States has at it with both Iran and Iraq. It's referred to as Persia. And it's a tremendous war, but it's over very quickly, and we come out the winner in it.
Yeah.
And I believe as mankind...
But isn't that kind of like winning the battle and losing the war?
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's just another notch toward what's coming, right?
Exactly. What we are doing systematically is turning the nations of the world against us. And according to the scriptures, at a time when we least expect it, they launch a nuclear attack.
Well, I've been trying to wrap my mind around the concept of bombing for peace since it began, and I haven't been able to do it. I think we're out of our minds, but anyway, you view this as just one little step toward an eventuality that you think is What's your best guess? How far away?
Well, I believe it could be as close as this fall, and it's most likely going to be within the next 10 years. And if nothing at all happens during that period of time, we've probably got a gap of about 30 years from biblical chronology. And I say that because most biblical chronologists base a 2,000-year period from the birth of Christ to his return.
Right.
Now, if that is not based upon the birth of Christ, but rather the crucifixion, that would jump it ahead, you see, another 30, 33 years.
Oh, I see. I see. So it depends on how you date it, from the birth or from the death.
Yes, and most chronologists would date it from the birth.
I would think so.
And the signs that were given were deep and powerful earthquakes, famines, pestilences, which are rising again, and then a strange comment about fearful signs coming from the heavens, which is reminiscent of Gordon Michael Scallion's comment about the haze, the green haze. Mary Summer Rain's Indian prophetess Noise said that a green haze develops. Hopi prophecy claims that there is a kind of a mystery haze.
Green haze.
And who knows what other signs, if the Book of Enoch is accurate.
How might that be manifested scientifically? Can you imagine a condition that would produce a green haze?
Electromagnetic, tremendous electromagnetic storms. I think as we approach this cycle, will reach its apex, according to the reports I have, between February and March of 2000.
All right. It's building quite rapidly right now. Cycle 23 is really on the go at the moment. We're having flare after flare after flare after flare.
Yes, and this could build. It seems as though we're entering a period where nature is going slightly out of kilter, out of balance. And the comments of the Lord that we would see signs in the moon, when you couple it with Enoch's comments that the moon will no longer keep its course. The book of Revelation talks about either an asteroid or a comet hit that we take. It appears as though the solar system and the entire galaxy is rising up into an area where we're going to be involved in some different, shall we say, configurations where we will be entering into comet, asteroid fields, and space debris that's out there.
Well, already we've had all of these reports of these giant fireballs. Now, most times, green fireballs, for example, different colored fireballs, aside from the anomalous nature of some of the reports, we'll get to that, the fireball reports have been astounding. I mean, we're not really in any known meteor storm period, and yet over the last year or so, these reports have just been piling up like crazy.
Well, there was a scientist that did some, I can't remember his name, but I do remember reading the report, and he claimed that when major earthquake activity was going to begin, that plasma balls would form in the atmosphere.
Really?
And he collated these plasma balls with the introduction of major earthquake activity.
Well, then if it's not objects entering the atmosphere and it's plasma balls, that might explain why occasionally we get reports that plasma balls hover in midair. Right now we're going back to Stewart Best, and we're talking about something pretty freaky. It's a pole shift, and I just now got this in from Peter Davenport at the National UFO Reporting Center in Washington. Good evening, Art. And Ramona, he says he knows Ramona. Some interesting sightings over the western U.S. tonight, just in the last couple hours. The first report we received from a woman in San Antonio at about 2400 hours Central. She alleges to have seen a prominent orange fireball with a long yellow tail move in level flight. That's underlined. In level flight from her right to left as she faced the southwest. said it was very strange indeed, could not possibly have been an aircraft, a meteor, or anything else. Then at 22:48 hours Pacific, 12 minutes earlier, a couple had a very interesting sighting of an oval object streaking across the sky in Ventura. No lights, very bizarre in appearance. 3 minutes prior to the latter sighting at 23:15 Mountain, a witness allegedly saw a very strange triangular object near the Salt Lake City airport. Also, there were apparently many witnesses to the explosion over northern Wisconsin last Thursday. It was very dramatic, they say. Peter, an explosion over Wisconsin, huh?
Well, we heard about it. I didn't actually see it.
You heard about it? I sure didn't. What's the deal?
Well, they said that somewhat like a mushroom cloud appeared after this loud explosion and hung in the atmosphere for quite some time.
That's right. No. Now that you said mushroom cloud, I remember. That you're absolutely right. A mushroom cloud appearance.
And we're going to see a lot of strange things from now on. It's like those reports. Now, some of them might be plasma balls, but obviously some may be U.S. military ops, or some may be what we're calling UFOs, whatever their source.
Here's one for you. Yesterday, Mount Baker snow, the fall for this year, broke the world's record. I say world's record by 4 inches. The total now is 1,124 inches this year. Yes, Art, the snow is still falling today, repeating a world's record in snowfall. Surprise you?
Not at all. In fact, a friend of mine lived by Mount Rainier, and he said they have, the geologists up there have grave worries now because of the snow and the way it's operating, that if it breaks loose, there's going to be like 750 feet or 1,000 feet of snow just peel off the mountain and go into the valleys. Cataclysmic.
All right.
Snow slides.
Here is a fax from William in Portland. He says, as I'm listening to the description of the instant freeze and supersonic winds that would result from a polar shift, I think about Bonnie Crystal. Now, she's a lady I had on Fascinating, who is a caver. She goes way down into the earth, as deep as 10,000 feet. He asked, could a person live through such an event as is being described by Stewart Best underground?
Again, it would depend, I guess, on where you were. There's no question that there were some survivors in the days of Noah's flood, because in the book of Genesis it talks about the giants,
right?
And it said that there were giants in the earth in those days and also after that, meaning after the flood. Well, where did they go? Well, if you go into von Daniken's books and all those others, you would only come to the conclusion that some of them went underground and did survive. We're not positive that was a polar shift, but it certainly was catastrophic. And it would depend totally, I guess, upon where you were.
I suppose, and there's no real way to predict before an event of this sort, or is there, where the safe places might be?
No, there really isn't, because we don't know exactly when the shift is going to take place or how that rotation of the Earth is going to occur. There are some nations that are targeted for destruction. We do know that, or at least scripturally speaking.
Yeah, let me just guess that we might be one of them.
Yes, we are. There's no question about it that America is targeted for destruction.
Why?
Basically, from the scriptural viewpoint, I think it's because the people, according to God anyway, rejected the scriptures, and they went after everything else instead.
Or put a simpler way, behavior.
Yes. And the American people become how do I say, totally materialistic, totally greedy on an average. Not everybody,
well,
of course.
Good thing that hasn't happened yet, huh?
And they start drifting away, and then, according to the scriptures, America takes the lead in forming a very evil, although it's presented as very benevolent, world empire. And I think that's what we're involved in over there in Yugoslavia. NATO has actually gotten out of its boundaries.
Boy, do I agree.
Has violated its own, constructions there and their charters.
NATO, after all, a North American treaty organization, right?
Yes.
It's supposed to be a defensive organization that was formed during the Cold War to prevent or to coordinate an attack should we be attacked by the Soviet Union, for example.
Yes. Totally defensive.
North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So it is a defensive organization that's now bombing the hell out of Yugoslavia, a sovereign nation.
Exactly. And the message that NATO has said to the world is very, very blunt when they released on this NATO 50th anniversary, when they said that from now on that NATO will have excursions beyond their own borders and apply weaponry to any nation that they feel deserves it.
And we are demonstrating that presently.
Yes.
Yes, no, indeed, that is correct. When it happened, I said on the air, and I say again tonight and now and evermore, that it was the first real giant step for the New World Order.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about.
I firmly believe that. Now, you've done a lot of work in this area. You believe this world order is coming, don't you?
Oh, I know it's coming. There's no way we can stop it. Absolutely no way we can stop it.
Will it precede the events that we've just been talking about with regard to the Earth changes, the polar shift, all the rest of it, or will it be what rises from the ashes?
Well, there's two ways of looking at that. I believe that right now we are under judgment. And as the world gets more materialistic and more evil, even though it professes itself to be good, we enter into World War III. And as you were talking about, this could well be the preliminaries of that war.
That's where the other ones began.
Yes, exactly. And as we progress into World War III, major destruction comes. And then, I believe, phase one of the major shifts in the Earth will begin to take place, and then there's going to be a calm period, a little bit of a calm period, in which the actual New World Order will rise up. In other words, this is just a preliminary. The New World Order, as far as we can figure out prophetically and from everything we can read politically and everything,
right,
is actually designed to fail, as we are seeing it today.
Designed to fail.
Yes, the United Nations, as it is right now, doesn't have any army. It has no power to tax, although it's been suggested that it could. And so let's say we have a major war. Well, then the peoples of the world would say, well, if we had given this world government the power it needed, the armies that it needed, et cetera, it might not have happened. Now, the danger,
I can see that as an afterthought. As the hearings are held, no doubt deep underground somewhere, if we had only done the following, well, it would have worked out, but we didn't. And so now the new order of things must be a one world without wars and without strife, and
that's right.
Many of us believe without a hell of a lot of freedom either.
Well, it has to come with no freedoms. Because if you follow the prophetic field or even some of the seers and the mystics, they all more or less agree that the control of people and the surveillance of people becomes almost unbearable.
Somebody sent me one sentence earlier today on a piece of paper, and it said something like, and I'm paraphrasing, it said, the Constitution was a wonderful thing. We should go back to it.
Absolutely. In fact, if you want it to stop, most of what is happening here, I believe if the American government went back to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and if the people rose up and demanded it and changed their behavior...
You're lucky to get the people to rise up to change channels.
That's the problem. Indifference. That's the entire problem. They don't care anymore. And I believe the Lord is calling people to repentance, and I think that's what a lot of these earth changes come from. The Hopis mentioned that a lot of this occurs to draw attention to man's behavior.
Fine. Let's talk about that for a second, because that bothers the heck out of me. In other words, if the Lord, if our Maker is all-powerful, then why would he allow all of this suffering and death and change to occur? Is it some sort of cosmic joke on his part?
No, if you read in the scriptures, his reply is that they bring it upon themselves.
Back to that old free will thing, right?
It's actually free will. It's like the concept of hell. A lot of people say, well, how could a God of love and that kind of power assign people to such a terrible place? Well, the answer is he doesn't. They assign themselves. Mankind has been...
But, wait a minute. These are the kind of questions that got me knocked out of Sunday school. Because, after all, we are the Lord's creation. We are made in his image, and why didn't he make us better?
Well, you'd have to go back into the story of Genesis. The story of Genesis briefly was that God created man in his own image, and the image of God, if you search out the scriptures, is one of unconditional love. It's called agape in the Greek. And the Greek coined that word agape because they really didn't have any word to describe the love of God.
So what happened to us?
Well, the love of God required him to put into this garden, if you want to believe the story, and I certainly do.
Adam and Eve?
Of Adam and Eve. He put the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and that knowledge is experiential.
Yeah.
When they ate of that tree,
the fruit,
yeah, they changed their entire makeup. They no longer were pure love. They were a combination of experiential good and experiential evil. And from that, Genesis claims that after that the people were created not in God's image, but in the image of Adam. And there was a drastic change in our makeup. That's the essential story of the Scriptures. That's the story of why Jesus Christ came into the world to redeem the world from the fall. Now, the world, more or less...
So Adam basically screwed it up for all of us.
Everybody. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And the Lord came down, Jesus Christ came down to effect what he termed rebirth, in which the people of the world who would come to him could be, through this rebirth, have their spirits resurrected in the love that they originally had. And, of course, the world rejects that message, basically.
Well, all right. Let's look around at a few other things. Columbine. Children killing children, apparently mindlessly. Things that we absolutely can't understand. Columbine was just the worst and the biggest and the most recent, but it's been going on for several years now. This incredible problem with our young people now. Now, adult crime is going down.
Yes.
Robberies, rapes, all kinds of things like that are on their way down, but at the same time, this mindless, almost soulless activity on the part of our youth is on the rise.
Yes. There's a reason for it.
According to Yale University astronomer Bradley Schaefer, they are very huge flares. I'm calling them super flares. You start looking at the underlying star, meaning other stars, and his quote, they are really disturbingly similar to our sun. Stewart?
Yes.
You agree with that, I take it?
Absolutely.
So all of a sudden the science is really backing up what I know you deep in your heart believe biblically. Is that about right?
Yes. There is no question that the Scriptures teach that the sun will give off 7 times the light it does now, and the moon will give off the light of the sun. Now, when you really stop and think about that, think about the changes upon Earth that would take place.
I can't see how we'd be here. If there was, forget 7 times the amount of sun, if we had double the amount of sun we have now, intensity, we wouldn't be here.
Well, under normal conditions, that would be true. Now, it's very, very interesting that in the Scriptures it talks about the Lord shortening the days to save the elect.
Huh.
Now, because prophecy is done in specific numbers of days, for example, the tribulation period is supposed to be...
That would be GSD, God's saving time.
Yes. There are certain specific numbers of days. They cannot be shortened. So in the book of Revelation, it talks about that the sun gives off 1/3 less light, the moon 1/3 less light, and the stars 1/3 less light.
Well, that would be just every bit as catastrophic.
Well, what that means is that the Earth has changed its rotational speed, and a day is no longer 24 hours.
Of course.
It's 16 hours.
Of course. I'm with you. All right. I just briefly want to come back to what I said. I mentioned Columbine, horrible thing.
Yes.
But it was just the most recent. There's been a rash of, and now since, of course, they've found kids planning to blow up their schools and their parents and kill classmates and all the rest of this unbelievable crap going on. A sign of another sign, I take it.
Well, I believe it is a sign, but it's a sign of the moral order of the schools. If you go into the educational process, and I've read some books on this, and I assume that they're telling me the truth, and that can be a dangerous word.
Yeah.
But in these books, they talk about, for example, the children being taught death education. For example, in that they're made to lay down in open graves. They're made to write their own obituaries.
What?
Yes, this is going on, and it's going on all over.
Why?
Well, it's to separate the children from the parents. The teachers actually, and I don't know as they know that they're doing it, some of them definitely know it, that they're teaching the kids that the parents are archaic, their values are archaic, and, you know, we are into this new paradigm shift, and they have what they call values clarification courses, which to you and I would be no values at all. And these kids are being stripped of their very souls and their very spirits by this method. And it doesn't surprise me at all.
I've really got to tell you that there was a time when I would have just tossed this kind of verbiage away, but you know what? You said soulless, and a lot of activity going on with our youth, to me, seems soulless.
It is.
I mean, literally, without soul, without regard for human life, without soul. I mean, sort of blank-eyed, different beings.
Well, they are. The Scriptures call it a seared consciousness. They don't have any conscience. But I don't think you can blame the children. I think it goes into media, it goes into their schooling, it goes into the churches failing to instill moral ethics. I mean, we've got all kinds of problems within the churches. They're almost as bad now as what they would term the heathen. In fact, I would have to almost say the heathen probably act better than a lot of the people within the church.
Ooh.
And we have all kinds of problems that have developed, and it really is exactly what the Scriptures say it is.
All right, a couple of calls. I want to take some calls, and then I want to ask you about UFOs. We've got a path to go down there for sure. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Stewart Best. Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hi, where are you, sir?
This is Jim in Hawaii.
Hi, Jim.
Well, you know, I just want to thank you, sir, for having Stewart on tonight.
Sure.
This is such an important message for the world and for our nation. I myself, too, am a Christian. I've been a missionary overseas for quite some time. I'm back in the States now. But it's appalling to me what's happening in America now. It's shocking to everyone, of course, but we must realize we're in troublous times. And I'm sure Stewart would agree with me, too. As the dear book talks about, Satan himself has been cast down to this earth, along with a third of the angels, which rebelled against God and his plan. So there's, we've got our cards stacked against us. We've got all hell breaking loose here.
That's what.
And, of course,
breaking loose.
Satan's plan is to destroy God's creation and the plan that he had. But, of course, he will fail in the end. We just have to keep going and do our best.
Not before a bunch of us go sailing off. All right, sir. Thank you very much. I take it you agree with that, certainly.
Oh, yes.
You've got something here called UFOs, Gateway to Hell.
Yes.
Now, what exactly do you mean by that? We are inundated now with UFOs, with... Stewart, I've got to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I saw one myself. I didn't see a light in the sky. I didn't see a vaguely, fuzzy object. What I saw came above my head.
Mm-hmm.
It blanked out the stars and the moon. It was gigantic. It was triangular. It was silent. And it was moving. It was not flying. It was not in aerodynamic flight, Stewart. It was defying gravity. And this came over the head of myself and my wife, and we watched it go across the valley. I guarantee, there are a few things in life I can guarantee, but I can guarantee you what I saw.
Absolutely. I don't question that a bit. My wife saw a very large triangular object when she left the bank one evening down in Menominee.
Really?
Very silent.
Yep.
Defying gravity. No sound, just floating along.
Okie doke. So we've got one or two things here. We've got either
Let me tell you a story.
It's ours or it's theirs.
Well, let me tell you a story, and I had a friend of mine who was a lieutenant commander in the Navy.
Yes, sir.
And we were flying along one night up around 40,000 feet, and it gets kind of mesmerizing up there. But anyway, we were talking about UFOs, and he turned to me in all seriousness. He said, I have to tell you something. UFOs are real. The government knows they are real. And then he told me this story about a UFO landing out in New Mexico, some abandoned field somewhere.
When?
This would have been back probably in the 50s. And he said that government personnel and civilian high-level personnel came, got on board this UFO, were on there for 4 or 5 hours, got off, and then the thing left. And he swore to me that that was the truth.
This was who told, a pilot?
This guy was a pilot, and he had been a lieutenant commander in the Navy, and he flew the heavy aircraft. And I don't know exactly how he got involved in that particular instance, but he swore to me that it was the truth, and I have no reason to doubt him.
Well, now I got a story for you. And this is going to wind right back into what we're talking about. This occurred, I'm going to say, a month and a half ago. I got several faxes from pilots flying a cargo routes to Minneapolis, St. Paul, who, this is tough stuff, Stewart, but the pilot and first officer both reported the fact that they were suddenly disoriented. They had there was a Northern Lights display going on, unlike one they've ever seen. Normally you see a shimmering. I lived in Alaska. I've seen it plenty of times.
Yes, we had one here not very long ago.
Yeah, they shimmer across the sky. But in this case, he said, at their altitude, 33,000, whatever it was, the entire sky was simply bright, and they felt extremely disoriented. And I read that fax on the air, and then the next day I got another fax from another pilot flying in the same area, except he said he had burns, literal, like he was sunburned, except for where his headphones were, you know, the headset they wear like the one I wear when I'm on the air here.
Okay.
And he was actually burned in some way by
That's probably a Tesla standing wave that they encountered.
a Tesla standing wave.
Well, what they've done, there's a combination between the United States and the Russians, and they have set up transmitting. You're familiar with HARP, I'm sure.
I certainly am.
Okay, well, they have set up these huge transmitters. And these ELF transmitters, extremely low frequency transmitters, are used to set up standing waves. And according to the information that we can get, many times the sky lights up.
Yes.
And then the next thing that can happen, of course, is a major earthquake, unusual storms, or severe lightning.
Are you aware that, I mean, we all, you know, there's much controversy, of course, about HARP, but are there experiments going on or that have been going on that delve into Tesla technology that we don't know about? I mean, just forget about HARP for a second.
Oh, absolutely. I think so. And the reason I think so is something that the scriptures say that a fake Messiah arrives with all lying signs and wonders. And if you go back into the book of Revelation, it more or less indicates that very high technology, we'd call them black operations, are used to fool the world.
To what end?
Well, this gets into something that sounds extremely strange, but sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.
All right, this is the home of
There's a fellow in Canada, he's dead now, but he produced a report on what was known as Project Bluebeam. And in that report, he said that they were going to use holographic transmissions to actually fake the arrival of a Messiah. And this Messiah would be seen all over the world. They would project it through various satellites.
Or I would suppose the ufology community might view it as an ET.
Yes.
The religious community as a Messiah.
Yes, precisely. It would, no matter what nation you were in, this entity would be either speaking and or arriving as the Messiah that they expected. Now, the scriptures say that the world is going to go under what it calls a strong delusion. And I looked up the word strong, and it means extremely effectual. And
well, that would do it.
Yes. And because, you see, the elite rulers know that religion is the opium of the people. Mankind is spiritual. And so they play on that. And by that method, they could set up a fake Messiah.
I admit I'm no different. I am not a strict Christian, not even a very good Christian, maybe not even a Christian at all. But I believe in a creator, and believe me, if a Messiah arrived, I would be, I'm being honest with you, I'm sure I'd be taken in. You know, if the Messiah appeared real, if it really did seem like the return of our Lord, I'd be taken in.
Well, you see, it gets very interesting because now you're moving into the UFO area.
Well, maybe I am. Maybe I am. Hold, let's try one more before the top of the hour. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Stewart Best. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Where are you?
I'm in Atoka, Oklahoma.
Okay.
My name is Carl. I would like to speak about the polar shift for a couple of questions.
Go. Yes.
And also some comments on the UFO and the UFO agenda.
Well, we'll get as much as we can in.
Okay. In the polar shift, they take place at no specific time limits or time frames. They are caused by a desynchronization of the Earth's off-center core with the moon's orbital gravity grasp upon it. During that process, when it desynchronizes, the Earth's internal heat and gravity generation shuts down. At that point, the moon moves to a far distance away from the Earth as the Earth's gravity collapses. The atmosphere immediately expands and flash freezes the whole Earth.
Well, wouldn't the moon suddenly just leave its present orbit and either become erratic or leave altogether?
No, it just moves out as the Earth's gravity collapses.
But if we have no gravity, then what keeps the moon?
We have a weaker residual gravity of the Earth's matter makeup.
Okay, I see.
So that doesn't collapse. But that's what kills all the land creatures.
Gotcha. Your theory, sir, is a little different than the traditional one about polar shifts. What causes them? But it sounds like you're saying the effect's about the same.
Yeah. As the moon moves out to its farthest distance, the moon itself turns over, and then when it comes back in, as the Earth's off-center core dissipates and then realigns itself and picks up another little seed from the moon's gravity and the sun's gravity.
All right, look, we're way short on time here. You wanted to ask something about UFOs. What were you going to ask?
Okay, the UFO flap that we have going on now are two different species of UFO aliens that have been on the Earth, one for 2.2 billion years, the other for 1.2 billion years.
All right, sir, we're going to hold it there. And when we come back, this is exactly what we're going to talk about. Nothing to lose but the pain. Do you believe in coincidence, synchronicity? Listen to this. Headline, Quake rocks Palm Springs area. Friday, May 14th. A magnitude 5.0 shook the desert near Palm Springs early today. No immediate reports of damage or injuries from the aftershock to a deadly earlier trembler. The earthquake happened at 12:54 a.m., 19 miles northeast of Palm Springs. Saturday, May 15th, headline, Mexican volcano again spews ash. Officials have warned that the volcano of fire in western Mexico will likely have a larger eruption after the mountain rumbled and spewed ash 7,200 feet above its crater. Date, May 16th. Headline, earthquake reported off Indonesia. Hong Kong, AP. An earthquake with an estimated magnitude of 6.2 struck off eastern Indonesia early Monday. 6.2. Here's another one. Quake hits Papua New Guinea coast. Date, May 16th, 1999. An earthquake with an estimated magnitude of 7 struck off the coast of Papua New Guinea early Sunday. This last Sunday. Or how about this? Quake shakes central New Zealand. Date, May 18th, 1999. Associated Press. An earthquake with a magnitude of 6.3 rattled central New Zealand on Tuesday evening. No damage or casualties in that one. We're talking about a span of just a few days. Interesting, huh, Stewart?
Yes, very.
Yes, indeed.
You can expect it to increase.
UFOs, Stewart. I saw one. Lots of people, millions of Americans have seen them. What do you think they are?
Well, I guess I think they are, for the most part of the delusion that the Lord said he was going to cast down, and they are interdimensional travelers, and they are from the satanic side. And I base that upon some of the comments that are made in the scriptures. If you go back into Genesis chapter 6, it talks about how these angels came down, saw that the daughters of men were really beautiful, cohabited with them, and bore a race of giants. Now, the Lord said that as it was in the days of Noah, so it would be again as the end of the age approached.
So put simply, you think they're demonic.
They are the return of the fallen angels, yes.
It's every bit as good a theory as any other. Because we can't, it's one of those things you can't quite put your finger on. You have a million reports. You have a ton of anecdotal evidence, very little physical evidence, but by God, there's sure something, maybe that's the wrong way to put it. There's something going on out there, for sure, and your explanation is as reasonable as visitors from impossible light years away.
Well, it's very interesting when you get into the ancient literature, like the Book of Enoch. He talks about how these beings, these fallen angels, were numerous in appearance. They came in many shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
All right, now, in the scriptures, in Genesis, it says that mankind was created out of the hand of the Most High God, the God who created time,
right,
space, energy, matter,
everything,
spirit, life.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now, these beings are created angels out of his hand, so they're called sons of God, but they went over to the other side. And the Book of Enoch is very interesting in how it lays it all out, because if that book is correct in its analysis, we would then, at the end of the age, which we are now getting into,
right,
if we're not well into it, which I think we probably are, there would be then a return of these fallen angels posing as extraterrestrials coming in many different forms. Why would they do that?
Bingo. You see, I think your explanation is every bit as reasonable as the scientists, the theoretical physicists who come on my program frequently and talk about the Big Bang and how it all began and everything came from something smaller than a little bitty quark, which we're not even sure about right now. And I can't wrap my mind around that one. Haven't been able to yet. I tell them all. And then I ask them, well, what was before that? And they say, I don't know. That's what they say, I don't know.
Yeah, well, from the biblical perspective, God is outside of time and space. He actually created space and time and put the universe within it. At least that's what he says.
Well, there had to be something. There had to be a couple of objects to reference to each other. Before that, there could not have been time or even reality as we now know it to be. I've got a lot of phone calls, so we'd better go to those.
Okay.
First-time caller line, you're on the air with Stewart Best. Hi.
How you doing?
All right. Where are you?
I'm in Houston, Texas.
Okay.
And I was listening to Mr. Best talk about the polar shift.
Yes.
And I'm a physicist. And I started crunching the numbers.
Okay.
And for this polar shift to take place, we're talking about the atmosphere going one way and the Earth going the other direction.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like, right?
The Earth weighs 6.59 times 10 to the 21st power tons.
Okay.
That's 21 zeros out towards the end.
It's almost like our budget.
You get it zipping around at about, I don't know exactly how fast it rotates, but you're talking about something in the order of about 3 1/4 times 10 to the 41 joules of energy. You can't stop that, even if you were to shift the pole, the insides of the Earth. If they were to flip sides completely, I don't see how it could stop. Talking about a tremendous amount of weight.
Well, I don't know as it stops its rotation. What the Old Testament talks about is that it topples and then it wobbles like a top back and forth until it regains an equilibrium. As to its rotation, it doesn't really say whether it stops or slows down or what.
Yeah, in other words, the laws of kinetic energy you're talking about are not violated. There simply is a change in as he pointed out, a wobble and then a change. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but in any case, in order to move the Earth at all, you're still talking about a force that, it would take an absolute universal cataclysm.
Well, that's what you get, though. And that even mainstream science now says that these polar shifts have occurred.
Oh, I believe the polar shifts magnetic polar shifts. I believe that's occurred because I've seen magnetic maps of the Earth, and there are bits and pieces. When there's a great concentration of North Pole magnetism at the northern pole of the Earth.
And it's moving around, by the way.
Yeah, and it's splotchy right around the equator. It shifts, and it does
I've seen documented evidence that that the magnetic poles will shift.
Well, one of the most popular theories now is that the magnetic field essentially goes to zero, and that there is then some sort of sun flare. And I think you would agree that with no magnetic field, a flare or a ejecta could have some pretty serious consequences for us.
It could if there wasn't a great deal of atmosphere in between us. Even though a solar flare is immensely powerful, it would have a hard time doing a great deal of
damage. Sir, have you heard the recent reports of the large ejectas that we've had that have, according to scientists, been depressing our atmosphere?
I believe it. I don't see any reason why it couldn't happen, but not to the degree where it would kill half of the planet or melt this half of the planet, whatever space.
Then how do you account, excuse me for taking your case, Stewart, but what about the woolly mammoths with the undigested plants in their little bellies, that sort of thing?
Well, if a woolly mammoth dies after it eats...
Instantly frozen, sir. In an area where there was vegetation and now there's nothing but thousands of feet of ice.
Well, if a woolly mammoth were walking along, were to stumble, were to fall into a great deal of water, something which it couldn't easily escape, it would gradually lose body heat. It would its metabolism would start to slow down, and it would not digest that food.
Okay.
It wouldn't be an instantaneous death, but it wouldn't have time. It wouldn't be able to digest whatever happened.
All right, but now the woolly mammoth is in thousands of feet of ice.
Right.
Where there was vegetation. Now that indicates it was a fairly dramatic change.
Right. Well, dramatic, yes. Instant, probably not.
All right, well, look, I appreciate the call. Most of the people, Stewart, like yourself, that I've talked to with regard to how fast a polar shift occurs, have said anything from hours to a day to maybe days at the most.
Yes, it would. All the evidence, all the ancient literatures claim it's very fast. It's like the times of Peleg. The word Peleg means earthquake. And the scriptures say that in the days of Peleg, the earth was divided. All the nations that we know now today were formed at that point in time. Now, that's a gigantic, cataclysmic change.
I'll say. All right, wildcard line, you're on the air with Stewart Best. Hi.
Hi, Art. It's Greg in El Cajon.
Hello.
How are you tonight?
Fine.
Good. Stewart, nice to speak to you.
Nice. Thank you.
Stewart, I have two questions for you, if I might. The first is a question about a statement you made just a little while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I make any mistakes in what you actually quoted, but you had said something that our school systems in the United States were attempting to separate our children from us and basically denounce our beliefs and values as parents. Could you add a little bit more to that? Because I thought that was a pretty frightening statement.
Well, there are several classes that are being taught to our kids. We got into death education. They're made to lay in graves, write their obituaries. They have what they call values clarification, which essentially is no values.
What grade level is that being taught?
It's been from every book I can get of the people that have studied it. It starts virtually from kindergarten and goes all the way up through high school.
Yeah, because our kids are, well, they're young. They're in first and second grade ending these years, and we're very involved in their school activities and what's taught at school, and we do help out at school as well at times. And I have never run across anything like that, and that's why
I've got to admit I haven't either.
Not once, and I've never heard a teacher ever utter anything that I would feel where they would trying to separate my child from me. Because, Stewart, if that were the case, my kids would be homeschooled for the rest of their life until they got through with the 12th grade.
On the other hand, my friend, I hate to tell you this, but there's a lot of parents who are pulling their kids out of school and homeschooling them for that exact reason, so you might want to look into it.
Yeah,
it's been a while since I've been in the school system, so...
There is something wrong with the public schools, and you have to remember that in order to bring in this new world order with this whole different paradigm set of values, you have to then slowly change the children's values And you do it over a long period of time. However, some of these books have some really astounding quotes from some of the educators. And I'm not sure it's going on in all the schools or that all the teachers are involved in it. But overall, there is an alienation process that's developing. Almost every parent that I've talked to, the kids are getting rebellious. They don't want to obey parents. Now, there's part of that, of course, is just growing up.
Look, it's undeniable. No, there's been a change, Stewart, a real change, since when I was a child, and I know everybody probably aging says this kind of thing, but it's true. There's a profound, profound change in too many of today's young people, not all by far, but too many. That's undeniable. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Stewart Best. Hi.
Good morning. How are you?
Well, I seem to be all right.
Great. My name is Desmond, and I'm calling from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, listening to you on News Talk 1230, WCBC.
That's the way to do it.
All right. First of all, I'd like to ask a question to Stewart. How are you, Stewart?
Fine.
Great. I would like to ask, you made reference earlier to giants.
Yes.
And can you go into a little bit about that? And I'd like to ask several questions and make,
I don't know if we have time for several, but giants, that was the mating of the Nephilim and with Our Ladies, right?
Yes. Well, actually...
or that was the Nephilim.
That was the Nephilim, was the product. Yeah. The Nephilim simply means fallen ones.
Fallen angels mating with Our Ladies, Earth girls.
And that is not only found in the Scripture, it's found in the Book of Enoch, and it's even found in Josephus, who was an ancient historian about 2,000 years ago. He writes about it.
Next question.
Well, this is not a question. It's going to be a comment. What I'd like to say is that there are strange similarities between prophecies in Islam and Christianity. First of all, there was a prophecy made by the Prophet Muhammad that there would be numerous earthquakes to increase as time ends. There will be numerous landslides, those predicted to be in the east, the west, and the south. And after this, I find this very amazing. You talked about an Indian woman, No Eyes, I think that was the name, who prophesied a green haze. In the Islamic religion, it is prophesied that there will become, during the end of time, a smoke.
Really?
Yes.
Same thing.
And there will be a smoke which would engulf the people. Now, the biggest of this, which I find extremely amazing, is that when you talked about the giant, there's a prophecy in which the Prophet Muhammad prophesies that when the word is fulfilled, or the truth is fulfilled against people, God will produce a beast from the earth.
Caller?
Yes.
Caller, can you hold on?
Sure.
I really do want to cover this, so both of you hold on. We're at the bottom of the hour, and when we come back, we'll talk about the similarities in the predictions of the Christian world and those in the Bible versus those of Islam. Back now to Stewart Best and my caller, who obviously is a follower of Islam. Is that correct?
Correct.
I had a feeling. All right, so in Islamic teachings, there will be a smoke. Is that correct?
Correct. This smoke will be as a product of the people's disobedience towards God and their involvement in the worldly life. And after this, there will be numerous signs. And before this, there will be numerous signs. But I think that the sign that sticks out the most is this beast, which will, like I said, it will be produced from the earth, which will speak to the people, and it will inform the people if they are truly a believer of God or in God or not.
Well, I'll tell you, that sure does sound like what Stewart Best is saying to me. Stewart?
Yes, there's very many similarities between the major prophecies of the world religions. It's very interesting that they all seem to come together, too, at about the approximate time.
Same time. Exactly right. Thank you very much, caller. Exactly right. At the same time, then, Stewart, why then should we presume or egotistically suggest, even through our belief systems, that we have the only true path?
Well, I guess the only thing you can do is take the scriptural admonitions on it. Jesus Christ was very emphatic.
I know.
That he was the Son of God.
I know.
And so a human being, I guess, from all over the earth has to make up their mind whether that statement is true or whether that statement is false. It's like the statement.
Well, that's such a rough road, though. I mean,
yes, it is.
It's like this way or no way, my way or no way, and yet here we have these other major religions saying virtually the same thing.
Well, I think the human race is very, very subconsciously aware that the time of the end is approaching.
That I agree with.
And they may not even know that. Unbelievers of anything are restless. And I think they sense that something is in the air and that major changes are coming.
Oh, you bet. Even people who are just generally, what's the right word? Spiritual, but not specifically religious, generally spiritual, they're feeling the same thing, Stewart.
Yes.
I've got a fax here from Australia. My good friend who says he's feeling better, Stan.
Oh, Stan, yes.
You know Stan.
Yes.
It says, Art, he actually calls me Artichoke. I don't know why he does that. He says, ask our friend Stewart to explain the role of Satan and the fallen angels in the UFO deception.
Okay, we kind of got off that a little bit, but basically, the fallen angels present themselves to mankind in many different forms, and what that does is prove that evolution was true because they evolved differently from all these different planets, and that the creation story in Genesis is false. It's an untrue statement. And therefore, because mankind evolved, there was no fall of mankind. We're merely evolving upwards, and we will eventually engage into godhood status and move out into the cosmos. That is like Satan saying, yea, hath God said. And we come back to that sort of, I can see where the human race might think that God's statements are quite arrogant. But he does make those statements. I am the only God. There is no other God. I created the heavens. I created the earth. I made the heavens as a tent. I made energy, spirit, life. And then he says, I sent my son to rescue mankind out of the dilemma of the fall. Now, mankind can either accept it or they can reject it. I mean, Jesus didn't come down here with two Uzis strapped to his side and grenade launchers.
Thankfully.
He said, he just presented his case. In fact, it's very strange. The Bible does not attempt to prove that God is or that Satan is. It just simply makes these statements as factual. And then God's position is because man rejected the Scriptures, they bring upon themselves their own destruction. Now, that's a hard message. It really is.
That sure is.
That's what it says.
That's the message. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, take it or leave it.
That's right. All right. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Stewart Best and Art Bell. Good morning.
Hi, Art. How you doing?
Well, I'm fine.
Good. Hey, this is Tim from Phoenix.
Yes, Tim.
And I've been deeply involved in researching, biblical prophecies and prophecies of Nostradamus. I particularly got caught up in the books that are out on the subject of Nostradamus some time ago.
Sure.
And I'm a skeptic. I want to believe. I'm like Agent Mulder, from the X-Files.
Why do you want to believe? I mean, if you want to believe in the prophecy of Nostradamus, if you want to believe in the prophecy of Christ and the Bible, then you're believing as Stewart is believing, and it's just about time to rock and roll if you believe. So why do you want to believe?
Well, I disagree with you on that because in Matthew 24, and I think your guest is familiar with that chapter.
I'm sure.
He talks about the end of the age. And he says all this bad stuff will happen, and then these are the beginning of the birth pangs.
Right.
Not death pangs, birth pangs.
Right, quickening.
Right,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah, but the part you skip over when you say that is there are presently about 6 billion human beings on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And before you get to the birth pangs, before you get to the birth part, there's going to be an awful lot of death.
I think he was referring back to the days when Rome had the evil of Rome, the empire, the evil empire.
I don't think so. Stewart?
No, I would not agree with that either. Most of these prophecies are, in fact, future, or, well, we're in some of them right now. But there's a difference between the end of the age and, like, AD 70. I know there are a lot of people who think that these all terminated in AD 70, but you can easily disprove that just by the language that's used.
Can I get at my question about the Nostradamus?
Go right ahead.
Okay. I was studying Nostradamus, so first I went to the most scholarly works, and there's only two good scholars on the subject, one from out of Oxford and one from out of Harvard.
Somewhat subjective, but all right.
All right. And I read their commentaries on the subject of Nostradamus.
Right.
And I just have to say, I saw such an incredible pattern of disinformation.
Oh?
Yeah. Now, it makes me wonder if there is some kind of a global conspiracy, and if it is an occultic conspiracy, if they might have latched onto these words from 500 years ago from this guy as some kind of roadmap to the future. What's your take on the subject, Stu?
Well, there's no question that the biblical aspect of it, that there is a conspiracy. It's headed up actually by Satan. When you use the word conspiracy, you have to be a little careful as to what you mean by that. But the Bible teaches that there is a conspirator, a chief conspirator, and he uses human dupes to bring about his world order because he wants to take the place of Christ. Essentially, that's what you have. You have a war between Jesus Christ and Satan as to who is going to rule over planet Earth.
Sounds like another episode of South Park.
It's a deadly battle. And many human lives are going to be destroyed over this.
Well, that's the part that I have a hard time just sort of glossing over, saying, oh, yeah, a little rough period, and then things will be better. And but the little rough period means billions of people who are here won't be.
Oh, yes. The Scripture is very clear that there are few men left after the polar shift. Men are as rare as fine gold is the way it's worded. Well, fine gold is pretty rare. So are you going to go from 6 billion down to, I don't know, but it'd be well under 1 million probably.
Uh-huh. That's the part that so many gloss over. First-time caller line, you're on the air with Stewart Best. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, hello there.
Yes, good morning. This is Sandra. I'm calling from northwestern Pennsylvania.
Glad to have you.
Thank you so very much. Stewart, a couple of things. Number one, I'm deeply grateful for the truth that you're bringing out here, and would like to speak with you a little bit about the deceptive hologram being projected with regard to the coming of the Messiah.
Yes, Project Bluebeam.
Project Bluebeam, that's exactly right. Prior to that, as you well know, Christians are expecting the rapture to take place before the actual second coming of the Messiah. Would you agree with that?
Well, I would agree that the vast majority of Christians are expecting it, but I do not agree with that.
Okay. All right.
Oh,
yes,
you don't?
There are a couple of viewpoints on that.
No cosmic vacuum cleaner for the Christians, huh?
I believe that the Christians are going to be here through a good part of the tribulation period. The only thing that the Bible says that we are exempt from is the wrath of God himself. And the reason the Christian is exempt from it is because you don't kill your own people, so to speak.
So basically this Jubilee stuff is a bunch of wishful thinking.
I believe the way they're teaching it, they call it the pre-tribulational rapture. I don't think you can support it from Scripture. No, I don't.
Okay. I happen to tend to agree with that, too. But basically, I've written a book called Y2K, WHY2K question mark, and it correlates the UFOs with the event of the computer chaos of Y2K. And Art, I did send you a copy of this book.
Good book title. Great way to get your plug in.
Well, okay. Basically, what this book puts forth is that the UFOs are going to put forth a counterfeit rapture.
I would agree with that from different sources I have read.
Yep.
There would be no better way to bring the world together than to rapture out the religious leaders from all over the world and the political leaders and then bring them back.
Exactly. That's what this puts forth.
Well, I say take them and leave them out. All right. Well, I certainly appreciate your call, man. Thank you. Leave them out there. Who wants them back anyway? Wildcard line. You're on the air with Stewart Best. Hi.
Hello, I'm John from Canada.
Hello, John. What part of Canada?
Ontario.
All right, because that's a big place.
Yeah. I got a question and a comment. The comment is that, that Cambrian event, that,
yes,
the pole axis of rotation shifted. Those scientists who did that, they said that took between 10 and 50 million years. So it wasn't rapid in any sense other than geological.
Well, there is, of course, some controversy about how long it took.
Yeah,
but yes, but you're right. The mainstream folks believe that.
That's because most geologists belong to that uniform, theory, that things take forever. But actually the scriptures and most of your ancient literature, not scriptures either, teach cataclysmic change with long periods of stability.
After all, sir, how many times have you heard me read an AP or UPI story say, scientists previously believed, however, today they now have found out that. In other words, what was yesterday's science seems to become today's truth. It was untrue yesterday, it's true today.
Yeah, sure, but claims like your guests have made require geologic processes to occur hundreds of millions to billions of times faster than they are observed today, and you really, I can't believe that.
But if it was as slow as you suggest, then you're going to have to tell me where the woolly mammoth and all the rest of this sort of thing, where there was vegetation, where it was tropical, and then suddenly it was ice.
Oh, Art, there's no scientific literature over the last 30 years where they've looked at these mammoths where it says that the vegetation was tropical. What it says is that you had Arctic-type plants in the stomach of these animals.
Arctic-type plants?
I don't know where this claim is coming from. I've heard creationists make this argument about buttercups being inside, but they fail to point out that there are a number of species of buttercups, and some of them are Arctic plants, meaning the plants that grow in the Arctic. These are what you find in the stomach of these animals. Now, certainly the climate was warmer, 15,000 years ago.
If it had to have been. I mean, you don't get buttercups at 100 below.
Well, you do have, in the Arctic, you do have flowers growing. I've been in the Arctic and seen them.
It happens, but it's
it
happens
toward
the shore, only toward the shore areas where there's a melt, just barely a melt.
Yeah, but in the scientific literature, the stomachs of these animals, over the last 30 years that these have been done, there is no claim in any of this literature of the plants being tropical. The plants in the stomach of these animals has been said to be Arctic plants. So I don't understand why this keeps coming up.
Well, it keeps coming up because scientists keep finding it.
Yeah, but
they don't say Arctic plants. They say what were tropical plants.
There is no papers to say that.
Well,
that's
yes,
the problem. It's a myth. That's a myth. There's no papers to say that.
Okay, all right. Well, let's let Stewart take that on. Is that a myth, Stewart?
I don't believe it is, and of course, the concept of cataclysmic change, I think, is going to be proven within the next 10 years, and I got a feeling that scientists are going to be scratching their heads as we enter in these next 2 or 3 years even. They're already scratching their heads over the weather.
I know.
Which is minor.
I'm waiting for, it's obvious to everybody that there is a profound weather change underway. But none of the scientists have yet come forward with the guts to say that.
That's right. They don't know why it's happening.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen soon, though. Mark my words. Somebody with the cojones is going to step forward and finally say what's happening.
Yes.
The world.
We hope so, anyway.
Listen, what if somebody were to start with Stewart Best and want to read something or watch a videotape that would be your favorite first choice? What would it be?
It would depend. Iron Mountain Blueprint for Tyranny was an excellent one, but that's more on the political.
Uh-huh.
If they're into more of the enigmas, the Atlantis Chronicles would be a good one. If they're into UFOs, definitely UFOs Gateway to Hell is an excellent video. Not just because we made it, but because
that title.
It's a deep probe video. And we also post a lot of literature on our website. We have a pretty big website. And they can visit that and check things out.
What is your website? God, I was supposed to ask you hours ago.
It's www.true, T-R-U, without the E, insight, INSIGHT.com.
Okay, .com. We will get a link up immediately. God, I should have done that a long time ago. That's www.true, T-R-U, insight, INSIGHT.com, right?
Right. They can call us at 1-800-257-2672.
All right. Can you afford to stay around for another hour?
Sure.
All right. Then it's done. Hold on. Stay right there. Stewart, there was a beginning of time.
Yes.
I believe this, whether you want to talk to the scientists who talk about the Big Bang and all that, or you want to talk to people like yourself who no doubt believe in creation as described in the Bible. Mm-hmm. There was a beginning of everything, of what we are, who we are, what's here, and time.
Yes.
Could there be an end to time, Stewart?
Oh, definitely. Eternity in the Scripture is not endless time. It's the absence of time. It's a whole new dimension.
The absence of time?
Yes. You're transported out of time-space into an eternal future, which is without time. In fact, it's very interesting if you read some of the near-death experiences where they've gone to heaven or claim they have gone to heaven, that they claim that the music, for example, has no beat to it because there's no time. It's very, very strange. Our concepts of time, of course, are probably not entirely accurate.
You want to expand on that a little bit? Not entirely. In what sense?
Well, this is hard to explain, but the way I look at it, let's say you have a wagon wheel, and the rim is time, and in the center is the hub, which is eternity. Now, the Lord makes a comment that whom he foreknew, he predestinated to go back to be with him. The only way you can understand that is that by being in eternity, he can transverse time. He sees all of it, from the beginning of it to the end.
Well, we're coming up here on the end of our tape and the ability to put any more on it. Unfortunately, we are constrained by 2 hours. But anyway, think about what we said back in 1999, compare it to today. Was it fairly accurate? And if it was, not because of me, it's because of the Lord. Thanks for listening.